Hello, my name is Ava, and welcome to my audio stories for the LUNALIA Festival 2022.
Ik ben vrij gerust.
Anders kan ik het hier al zetten zoals het is, dan kan je het... Misschien is dat handiger voor jou?
Visueel eigenlijk.
Belgian artist, your instrument, lute, it's a Middle East instrument. It's really interesting to me that how you become interested in instrument.
Well, of course, it's true. It is a Middle Eastern instrument, but it's also very European. I mean, it was already in the Middle Ages. It was brought to Europe by the Arabs. They brought the oud. Yeah, and I think back then, because we always like to think of history as like it's a lot of separate events, and it's like these people against these people. But in the end, these people were all living together. And we also really have pictures where they are playing together. And you have really like paintings, like, well, I call them paintings. They are not paintings, but like, let's say, medieval Spanish pictures where you see like an oud and a lute, well, the European lute, like in the same ensemble. So I think it's very interesting. There was really this fusion happening. For me, it was, so of course we adapted the instrument, the oud, to our taste. At a certain time, so in the beginning, the lute, the European lute, let's say, the double strings from the Arabic oud. And we were also playing it with a plectrum. So for us, it was also a melodic instrument. But then, towards the end of the 15th century, we started to use the fingers, and that's where it started to be a polyphonic instrument. Because, of course, that's really the main difference between Arabic music or Oriental music and European music, for us, it's really like the polyphony, which is like the most important thing. So then, of course, it demands a different playing technique. And also the thing is that because of this possibility that the lute had to play more voices at the same time, it became like almost like, let's say, the queen of instruments in the Renaissance times, because we had this idea that it was this Platonic idea that you had the harmony of the spheres. So somewhere, well, we call it the heavens, but we don't really know where, there is some kind of harmonious or harmonic perfection. And it was actually the task of musicians and composers on earth to make this harmonic divine perfection sound like for everybody. So that was what we were doing actually with our instruments. And that's also why the lute became so important, because it was just one instrument which could give this whole harmony. That's the whole idea. And then for me as a child, so I started playing the classical guitar. I went to the music school and I chose classical guitar because of flamenco, because I was hesitating between piano and classical guitar. And then we were on vacation in Spain with my family, and I heard flamenco, and I said, okay, I choose guitar. So somehow, I already had a knack, I think, for this kind of more exotic music or more, let's say, non-Western traditional style somehow. Well, I was very lucky that I had a teacher who was very interested in early music, played viola da gamba. So he gave me a lot of early music. And without me knowing that, all the differences, I always asked for this type of music. So I had this book, Music Out of Shakespeare's Time. Yes, I just love this music. And so it stayed with me like, I don't know, around 16, my teacher told me, but you should play the lute because you were always asking for this type of music. So that's how it happened. It's actually by accident and really by affinity for the repertoire. All these little things that happen in life that make that you make certain choices. And in the end, it's like one meeting or one discovery or one concert or whatever was very meaningful and somehow finds the direction of your life. And that's very interesting.
About the Vanishing Point, could you explain the context a bit? After 5 years, think that it's something that you want to work on it, look at what you have been through.
Well, it's also there. It was also not really a conscious decision, let's say. So it's actually many things. What I was just telling about my instrument it had to do a lot with small accidents, let's say, or just like les hasards, as we say in French. So also with this program, actually I was asked by Beaux-Arts. They wanted to organize a day around mental well-being. And because I think it was like a main theme for the season was about mental health, I think, was one of the topics. And so the early music programmer, Vera de Klerk, she wanted to organize a weekend or a day around this mental well-being. And it was actually, she wanted to do this at the Erasmus house, because the philosopher Erasmus, it's not far from here actually. He used to have his house in the countryside, it was still countryside then. When the city was becoming too crowded and too busy for him, he would go to this house, which is now really inside the city. Well, Vera knows me since a long time, so she also knew that I had gone through this burnout. So she asked me, would you not want to play a lute recital in the end of the day? Also, of course, because the lute is also, it's a very soft instrument, so it's also very healing. It has, well, since ancient times, it has this healing powers, or this believed healing powers. So it was a logical choice to choose the lute. And I said, yes, I could do that. But I said, but solo recital, it's good, but I can do that in my living room, because I also do that. I give concerts here in my living room. I like that. And so I said I would like to do something special. Something that I really create for this day. So I started to think about it, and then my very good friend Annemarie, who wrote the text, so I was speaking with her about it, and she said, but perhaps you could also really tell your story, and we could do something with that there will also really be an actor on stage who tells your story. And I also always like to combine early music and new music. I think for me as an artist, it's very important to kind of show that the things we are busy with as human beings, they are the same all over the world, and they are the same in all the centuries. And it's just a historical, geographical context which makes the differences. But when you really go to the source, when you really go to the roots, and when you really go to the center, it's all very similar, actually, like big searches of the human soul, let's say. I said, I would also like newly composed piece for this performance or this program. That was also a very interesting encounter, because I had worked with composers before, so several, and this time I thought, I would really like to work with somebody that I don't know at all, somehow. And it was also through Annemarie, she spoke with some people, and also a Flemish cello player who does a lot of contemporary music. He knows me and he heard me play already, and he said, I think Sofie, she might like these composers. So he gave me some names, and I listened to them, and I picked out this one person, Vladimir, a Russian composer, and it was also like a very interesting meeting. He was also very interested in the idea, also in the instrument. He also had this link with non-Western music, so somehow we had a lot of things in common. He also used to play the guitar, the classical guitar. So in the end it became a very big project somehow. And then there's also the reason that the voice was recorded initially was because there was not enough money to always have an actor on stage somehow. And I also thought in the end it's better, because like a burnout is, let's say, a very lonely process. It's something that you really have to go through alone. So somehow it would be strange to be on stage with somebody else. So in the end, I think that the fact that the voice was recorded made it more powerful. I also asked him to create soundscapes. So in the end, the soundscapes are really present almost the whole of the program, the whole of the evening.
Ze zei dat ze niet wilde komen, niet begreep
course, there is this early music, which is a very, I always call it, it's an idealistic type of music somehow, because composers, as I said before, they are like wanting to recreate like some kind of divine perfect harmony, or they are really writing religious music, or they are really writing music for a king who is getting married or something. So it's always to honor something or somebody. I mean, back then we are still in the time that people are not really going to soul search and put the soul search in music. Let's say you have to listen to the music or you have to play the music in a very abstract way if you want to find things which somehow relate to your inner voice, let's say. So, because if I play, there are some fantasias or some fancies in the program, and it's really very abstract. I mean, it's very abstract music. It doesn't mean anything, you know? It's not like Schumann or Schubert or other 19th century composers who really have their soul on their tongue and they just want everybody to see. It was, I think, a way of making and writing music which was much closer to crafts, actually, than today, I think. Because today we like to speak about position in society and how we see the real world around us and all these kind of things. But for me, back then, music was very often an escape, actually. People were not so busy with what was actually happening in the moment. They were somehow consciously or unconsciously, but they were living and they were actually waiting for the better world, which would be after death somehow. It's a very different way of looking at art or at your own art, actually. So that's how it started, and then actually Annemarie, she started doing interviews. Because she is also, she's my best friend. I mean, she has known me during this period. But she was very precise and she likes detail a lot. So she was really asking questions. So I really went through the whole process again. That was actually really difficult. I think burnout, when I look back on it and when I explain it afterwards, is also you are somehow numbed. You know, your mind is as if you're paralyzed. So there's many things that I didn't realize at the moment. My whole body and my whole mind, they were just in standby. They were just literally surviving. So I could not read anymore. I could not see well because everything had different colors. I was cold all the time. So it's like your body is really reducing everything it normally does just to stay alive, actually. So it also means that I could not speak, for instance. I mean, it was very difficult for me to find my words and all those kind of things. But at that moment, I didn't have the energy to be alarmed by it. You know, I didn't have the energy to think, well, this is good or not good or problematic or not problematic. I didn't know. You know, it was just a fact. And it was actually afterwards, when I was telling this whole story and living this whole story again, that I started to realize that I had been in a very bad state, actually. So it was difficult, this process. Annemarie, she wrote out all the interviews, and I translated them into English for the composer, because he really wanted to know everything, really everything. He wanted to know every little detail, he wanted to know the story, because he does a lot of opera, musical theater in Russia, so he likes the theatrical element, so he really wanted to know very precisely. It was also Corona times, so it was all happening through Zoom. I mean, yes, so it was in a Corona context. But again, it also made it somehow stronger. It was a bit like, again, a constraint somehow. Like the fact that we didn't have an actor, which in the end made the show more powerful, I think. But also the fact that I couldn't go to Moscow, or Vladimir could not come here. You know, we were having meetings on Zoom like every week, and we would try out things on the Zoom and So I went to the studio to record things that he would use in the soundscapes, because all the soundscapes, they come from my instrument actually, or me breathing or whatever. The collaboration was very intense actually, and was more intense than it would have been without Corona. Because I would have gone once there, he would have gone once here, and that would be it, you know? And now there was this very, very followed. And it's the same now actually with the 15-hour performance. So of course it was still Corona, but then it's also war. So, you know, the circumstances became even more complicated. I mean, we are really used to work like this now, somehow. Yeah.
Finding a new system.
Exactly.
Way of connection.
Yeah, exactly. It's actually very powerful, I think, to work on burnout in these times, because somehow COVID or Corona is also, it's a bit a burnout of a society, of a world, actually, or a way of living, because it has a lot of parallels. But also being Corona sick, as I am now, it also has a lot of parallels with burnout. So, and also now the war in Russia or in Ukraine, which is totally useless and totally without reason. So yeah, somehow it all adds more ingredients to a story which is in the end, in really the center of the story. It's the same story. It's about abuse. It's about not respecting borders, whether they are your own limits or, you know, borders of a country. So it's actually in the end, it's all really one story, let's say.
It's not that much easy to share all these things with audience. At the beginning, it's a personal experiment, and then it becomes to a project with other artists, composers, and now you will share it with audience as well. You had experimented once, but did you think about it when you start this project?
Yeah, I must say that already during my burnout, I was very open about it. Of course, I was not seeing a lot of people, but for instance, in my email, my out of office, it was very clear what was happening. And then I remember even my mother saying, but Sofie, you should not write this because, you know, not everybody needs to know what you are going through. And I never understood this taboo thing. Of course, I understand, because once that you are ill and you are out, you have to take a break for half a year or whatever, you are out. People think that you are never going to come back. So it's a risk, you know, it's a professional risk to say, well, this is the matter, I'm out. But I cannot do that. You know, I don't want to hide who I am or what I'm doing or what I'm not doing, so I'm quite open. So that was not so difficult for me. So that's also the fact that then in the end I wanted to make like a show around it, a program around it, was not really a problem. Of course, there were certain things that I said during the interview that in the end I said, well, perhaps I would not want that to be in the final text of the show or not in the book. It's very few things, but a few things that I thought, well, no, I don't want it there. And then what is also really interesting, also in the context of even storytelling, is that the weeks that we were doing the interviews were very difficult. Because I was really going through the whole process again, and I was like discovering things that I had not realized actually. So when we started the first rehearsal period, which was actually a year ago, because the premiere would have been 1 year ago, I was very frightened before. Because I thought, whoa, if the interviews were already that difficult, what will it be now? And no, it was not difficult at all. It's as if the story was already somebody else's story. Because also even if you speak about a personal experience, it's always colored in the way that you are at that specific moment. So even memories, if you recall memories, they change over time because you analyze them in a different way or interpret them in a different way. By doing the interviews that I somehow could kind of, it was somehow some kind of closure actually. Premiere was there, it was in October, then of course there was like this thing like, oh my god, what am I doing? You know, this is really not interesting for people to come and listen to, because in the end it's my story and it's really not interesting. And so this kind of things, you know, but it's very, I think then I'm really a performer. yeah, it's very intense, of course. Some people tell you, wow, it's so brave to do this, and it's so much courage to speak about it and everything. And for me, it doesn't feel like that, actually. You know, it's my story, and it's the story of many people. And we live in a society in which this kind of problems, you know, they don't really have their space, although it's already better now than it was 5 years ago. But yes, I'm also, I think, somebody who I always consider myself lucky in the way that, that I also have, like, let's say, family and friends who understand and who wish me best. And, you know, that I had a lot of support, both, well, mentally, but also practically or financially, all these kind of things. Yes, I also have a personality which is really capable of living my life with the things which are at hand at that specific moment. I consider that as a luck and as a talent that not everybody has. For me, it's important to share this story because people can learn from it, and people already learn from it, actually. It also means that my difficult time, let's say, that it has brought something, you know, something positive came out of it. Yes, it's also because you also asked how I picked the music. Then that was also where you were speaking about. Well, we did it after the interviews, after everything was like put a bit in a schedule. Like Annemarie, she let's say, distilled certain topics or themes or phrases which always came back. And then I really went through my repertoire and I started to see how I could connect them. Let's say I do have, even if the music is very abstract, I do have a very clear idea about what things mean. I mean, like in a more philosophical way or something. So that was really like some kind of puzzle, actually. I mean, to make some kind of free associations. It also, of course, it adds to the authenticity that it's really like I'm telling a story, and for me, this is the piece which really belongs there.